Welcome to the College of Public and International Affairs Faculty Roundtable, where faculty members have a chance to share with other faculty members and students and members of the community about things that they are particularly interested in and working on. And today we have a special opportunity because our dean was in France on a Fulbright fellowship. And so he's going to take this opportunity to share with us some of his, I believe, reflections and comments from that time in France. So let's welcome our Dean, Tom Swart.
Thank you, Professor Lay, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about my recent opportunity in France. The first part of my presentation will be kind of some tourism, just to show you some things about what I did while I was there, and then I want to talk a little bit about the fundamental content or focus of what I discovered during my stay, which might be, I think, of interest eventually to everyone here. First of all, I was part of a group of 11 different administrators from all over the United States who participated in this particular program. It was the first one ever which focused especially on the French educational system, and it was designed for those of us who specialize in international education. And the schools that were represented in our group were Columbia University, St. Louis University, Kent State, the New School, Parsons School of Design, Pitzer College, which Dr. Weiss knows is part of Claremont, and WES, the World Educational Services, Brigham Young University, Bellarmine University, SUNY Westbury, Averett University, and the University of Bridgeport. We are videotaping this, so I want to give a shout out to my colleagues that were part of this with me. I want to say hello to Arnaud and to Patricia, who were the guides of our program and actually put everything together, and also hello to Diana, Stefan, Catherine, Lynn, Cindy, Iris, Cynthia, Mary, Angel, Kevin, and Charlie Fox, who wasn't able to join us, but was with us in heart and kind of followed everything as we went along. As I said, this was the first of these types of programs that took place in France, and I believe that it's going to be continued. We had an opportunity to particularly visit in three cities in France. One of them was Paris. And, this is the Sorbonne. This is also part of the Sorbonne, which is their law school. And this is a meeting which several of us had with administrators from Sorbonne 1, which is one of their institutions there. We also had a chance to have a meeting with Francois Weil. Actually, he met with us for I think a good hour at least, and he's actually the chancellor of all the universities of Paris, and also the director of the Academy of Paris, and he gave us an update of all the different changes that are occurring within the French university system at this time. Everywhere we went, we had these that we carried with us. So University of Bridgeport was seen everywhere we traveled in France. And anyway, we had some fabulous opportunities. This is a particle accelerator, one of the most developed in the world, and it's part of one of the developing new French campuses that I'm going to talk about in my presentation today. And this is one of our alumni from the GLDP program, Veronica de Leon. She now works at the European Council, the Council of Europe, I'm sorry. And these are the two leaders of the Fulbright France program, Arnaud Rougeau and Patricia Janin, who, as I said, kind of guided us throughout our time there in France. And this is a photo that I really fought to have. This is the president of Sorbonne 1, and this is me beside him. So I kind of longed to have that picture in front of me. So the topic that I'm going to discuss today is how Shanghai changed Paris. And I want to put things in a certain perspective based around that. I, first of all, was interested in this opportunity when it came up because of my own interest in political and economic integration. I think many of you know I teach a course in that. Also, I have done past research and writing on the European Union. Actually, in 1991, I was contracted, and I was the translator of the first text from French to English on a comparison of all the pension systems throughout the European Union and the ways that they were going to change, and they needed to be adapted in order to somehow coordinate with each other. And I had a particular interest in the Bologna Accords because I could see that somehow, just by my interaction over the last couple of years with some French colleagues that I know through the Alliance Française in New York, I could see that there is a lot of, there's a growing identity of a European identity. And I was in Paris 3 years ago, and when I left, heading for the airport, I remember what came to my mind was France is becoming a bilingual country, which I never would have thought was possible from my earlier experiences there. But the reality is that they've started to embrace English as a way to be able to communicate and to continue to develop. So my original research question was, are there lessons in the Bologna process of higher education integration that can contribute to the political, economic, and education integration initiatives of other regional initiatives such as Mercosur, Latin America, ASEAN, Southeast Asia, and APEC, which represents basically the whole Trans-Pacific. But because of my experience there, I decided that I would focus on dealing with another issue. And my question became, what has led the Shanghai rankings to have such an impact on France? And will those rankings also affect the United States over time? How many of you are familiar with the Shanghai rankings? Just curious. So just, and go, okay. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about those as I go along. But it's interesting because of my lived experience. I recalled certain things which actually kind of got France education to where it is today. Anybody know what this is?
Yes, the riots in the 60s.
It's the riots in the 60s. Riots of May 1968. Now, I was around at that time. I'm not going to say what I was doing at that time. But I was there. So.
Sorry, Molotov.
But anyway, this particular poster kind of expresses the frustration. That's General de Gaulle. And what it says there is, be young, and be quiet. You know? And just the frustration that things were being essentially handled by exclusively, an administration. The riots went on for a period of approximately more than about 3.5 weeks. And they fell apart because these two gentlemen couldn't come together. The man on your left is Georges Marchais. He was the president of the French Communist Party. And I think the person on your right you may recognize.
Looking very young.
Looking very young. François Mitterrand, who was actually the president of the Socialist Party, and whom I actually, believe it or not, I met in 1969. I don't think you would remember that. Of course, he's not around anymore to remember anyways, but I did meet him in 1969. Because of the breakdown between the socialist and the communist, President Charles de Gaulle was able to save his presidency. And he was able to save the Fifth Republic. And on May 30th, 1968, there was a rally with 500,000 pro-Gaullists around the Arch of Triumph in Paris. And on June 30th, 1968, Charles de Gaulle said, I'm not stepping down. And he also, in May, he said, I'm not stepping down. May 30th, he announced, I'm not stepping down. And he also announced that he was going to dissolve the National Assembly, which you can do with a parliamentary government. He dissolved the National Assembly. And on June 30th, 1968, the Gaullists and their allies won 395 of the 485 seats in the French National Assembly. So de Gaulle was able to preserve his presidency, and the Fifth Republic survived. It's now been in existence for 60 years almost. It's the longest lasting of the French republics is the third. I think it lasted for 70 years. But the Fifth Republic is doing very well and continues. So, de Gaulle survived until 1969, when he finally stepped down after a referendum. The Fifth Republic survives until today, but the Sorbonne did not survive as a consequence of the riots of 1968. The Sorbonne was basically dismantled in a certain way, reconstructed also, one might say, by Edgar Faure. Edgar Faure was appointed by Charles de Gaulle in July 1968 as the new Minister of Education of France. And he essentially made a decision to divide the University of Paris into 13 smaller universities. And the same thing happened in other parts of France. The University of Lyon, France was divided into 4 smaller universities. The University of Bordeaux was divided into 4 smaller universities. The University of Strasbourg, and anyway, all across the country, they were divided into these smaller institutions. And subdivisions were supported, and to a significant extent, they expanded between 1968 and 2000. But then the rankings and the perceptions of France's universities began to decline. Here in the United States, everybody knows U.S. News, America's Best Colleges. You know, we even have it on our homepage. But in France, nobody talks about U.S. News. And even though U.S. News does have an international ranking as well that's available to look at world universities, instead, in Europe, there's the Times Higher Education World University Rankings. There's something called QS. There is the new European Union ranking, which will begin in 2014, called U Multi-Rank. But everywhere we traveled in France, the only thing I heard about was the Shanghai Jiao Tong University Research Institute Academic Ranking of World Universities, so-called ARWU. Everywhere we went, this is the only ranking that they talk about. And if you look at the ARWU rankings, sorry, this is 2006. I was in a hurry to get a cut and paste, so I put 2006. But it's also true in 2013. 19 of the top 25 universities in the world are American universities, based on the Shanghai rankings. 4 of the top universities in the world are British. 1 of the top universities is Japanese, and 1 of the top universities is Swiss. There are no French universities in the top 25 at all. But these are the criteria whereby the ARWU, the Shanghai rankings, are made. They look at the number of Nobel laureates and Fields medalists that a university has amongst their alumni and their faculty. Everyone knows what the Fields Medal is?
Well, I know there's a mathematics.
Exactly. It's the so-called mathematics equivalent of the Nobel Prize. Also, they look at faculty performance in high-profile publications in 21 key disciplines. And they also look at the extent to which faculty are from a university are cited in key indexed social science and science publications. And then, looking at all those things combined, then they measure the per capita performance of each institution. I'm sorry I don't have the percentage breakdown of these, but there is a breakdown, and based around that, they come to their rankings. This is France's dilemma. France and the United States are tied for the most Fields medalists. They each have 11. I think the next country has like 5 or 6. Among the nations of the world, France ranks 4th for Nobel medalists, ahead of Russia, Japan, and China. Behind Britain and Germany, but ahead of Russia, Japan, and China. The dilemma is that French faculty and researchers have published much of their work in French, but the Shanghai rankings only take into consideration publications that are done in English. So they find themselves in a certain number of disadvantages. Anybody know what the Grands Écoles are in France? Like you might hear about the Sorbonne or something. I think the Sorbonne is really a big deal. In France, it's not a big deal. The big deal are the Grands Écoles. The Grands Écoles are the French Ivy League. They are the elite schools that people compete like crazy to get into. And those schools particularly are significant, but I want to talk something about how they differ from American institutions. You have schools like the École Normale Supérieure, and it's sometimes called France's Harvard. And it's the alma mater of people like Jean-Paul Sartre, Henri Bergson, Louis Pasteur, Michel Foucault. You have the École Polytechnique, which is France's Caltech, or MIT, and it's the alma mater of Auguste Comte, Nobel laureate Maurice Allais, French President Régis Giscard d'Estaing. And you also have the École Nationale d'Administration, which is similar to the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. And it's the alma mater of the current president, François Hollande. It's the alma mater of French President Jacques Chirac, and also Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. These schools do not award doctorates. They only deliver master's degrees and diplomas. Diploma means degree in French. It doesn't mean just diploma, it's a degree. And France is different from the United States or Britain or Germany or other places because the only people that you call doctor in France normally are, guess who? Medical doctors. You don't call somebody who has a PhD in East Asian studies or sociology or international relations doctor. They're going to be Monsieur, Mr., or they're going to be Madame, or they're going to be Mademoiselle, but they are never going to be called doctor. And these schools, they do not award doctorates. And it was interesting because we had a chance to meet with one of the academic deans of the École Nationale d'Administration, ENA. And he said he came to the United States and his feeling was, hey, I graduated from ENA, what do you want, But he came to the US and people said, where's your PhD? You don't have a PhD, No, you're not what we're looking for. He said that he felt he had to go back and start to rethink some things. So the French are rethinking a lot of things. They are thinking right now, well, maybe we have to incorporate doctorates into our program. But more than that, they are heading in a direction which I would describe as the pre-May 1968 direction, in some ways. Consider the École Normale Supérieure. They have produced 13 Nobel Prize winners. They have produced 10 of the 11 Fields medalists in France. They have produced a number of heads of state and government. Georges Pompidou, or Léon Blum. Basically, but in the Shanghai rankings, the École Normale Supérieure is ranked 71. So it's a dilemma. And how do you respond to that dilemma? Well, the way that France decided to respond to this was a presidential decision. In 2007, Nicolas Sarkozy, as president of France, he informed his Minister of Higher Education and Research that he wanted 2 of the top world universities to be French, and that he wanted 10 of the top 100 universities in these rankings to be French. And then he proposed a way in which to make this happen. And his proposal was to do this through the pooling of resources, somehow starting to bring all these subdivisions into some type of partnerships, if you will. And a lot of our visit was about getting to know about those partnerships. Now, in 2012, Francois Hollande, who was a Socialist Party candidate, became president of France. During the elections, he said that what Nicolas Sarkozy was proposing to do was kind of, head down, and he said it was undemocratic. However, he did not change the policies. And the policies and the direction that France is going into has continued. And in 2014, a number of partnerships, you may want to call them mergers, are going to be transpiring. For example, Paris Sorbonne 4 and Paris 6, Pierre and Marie Curie, are now working together in a new partnership called Sorbonne Université. And also national research centers. France has these fabulous national research centers where they bring together scholars who do just research, are being connected to those types of partnerships. Also, some of the grandes écoles are also becoming involved with this. And to stimulate this process, the government is providing significant funding. So, for example, an institution such as Sorbonne Université will be receiving a quasi-endowment funding from the French government, which is the equivalent of 1.37 billion US dollars to begin to work together. And probably the most interesting place that we had a chance to visit while we were in France, I would say, in terms of studying this process, was the University of Paris-Saclay. Under its umbrella is bringing together 7 of France's most famous grandes écoles, including Polytechnique, Haute Études Commerciales, which is one of the most important business schools in France, and also one of the 3 Écoles Normales Supérieures. This is not the one with the 13 Nobel Prize winners. This is another one, which is called École Normale Supérieure Cachan. It's a city just outside of Paris. On this, I don't want to call it campus because it's much more. On this complex where they are, you're going to have 10,000 National Research Center scientists located and conducting activities. There will also be 20,000 private industry researchers. For example, you all know Dan & Yogurt, for example, in the United States. Well, basically, all of their researchers in terms of product development and everything, they've moved to this location. Citroën has moved to this location, etc. And as I said, one of the most advanced cyclical particle accelerators in the world is also going to be housed there. It's already housed there. It's already there. What is the goal? Well, the goal is pretty simple. To be among the highest in the Shanghai rankings. That's what's behind all of these initiatives. They feel that because of what they're doing, that very quickly, and we were told this by the Director of International Relations for the University of Paris-Saclay, that as a consequence of doing this very quickly, this university will become one of the very top universities in the world. So there are opportunities and challenges. There's a chance for collaboration because of these new partnerships. And hopefully they can find ways to avoid the risks and failures of the past, such as those that transpired in 1968 when students felt suffocated and people really felt that everything was just top down. And it's also an opportunity for French education and its many strengths to be recognized. French education, I'm going to go back again to Veronica de Lyon, who studied here. French education has such a wonderful way to prepare people to conduct research and to write. They have a very clear methodology, which is really how do you pose questions, how do you break them down, how do you approach them, how do you conduct. It's a very, very systematic thing which they learn by the time they finish high school. They already have much of that in place. So it's a remarkable thing, and they build upon it during the university years. So there are some great things about French education. I mentioned Veronica de Leon because she came here and she did her dissertation with Dr. Benjamin. Many people, they struggle with that because it really requires a certain kind of discipline and process that's new to them. And she said, for me it was no problem because having been educated in the French system, it was very simple to be able to proceed. However, in this new model, you can understand that undergraduate education may not be the top priority because their goal is to become ranked as research institutions. We did visit 2 universities, one which is located just outside Paris, the University of Paris at Créteil, and we also the University of Strasbourg, where undergraduate education did appear to have a more prominent role, and it was discussed there initially. But there are challenges which the French system faces, and one of those challenges is because education is so inexpensive. In order to study at a French university, your annual tuition is $240. Every French university across the country. And you pay $270 for health insurance each year. So students, everybody finds it to be an attractive gamble. Hey, why not go to university to study? Furthermore, admission to a university in France, except for the Grandes Écoles, you can go to the Sorbonne, you can go anywhere, is automatic, so long as you have a baccalaureate. And there are 3 types of baccalaureate. This is where the problem lies. I don't know what to compare the baccalaureate to, but those of you who are from New York, we have the Regents Diploma in New York. It's something like the Regents Diploma, but it's a little bit more than that. It's something that they prepare all the way through secondary school. But there are 3 types of baccalaureate in France. There's the general, which is for university-bound students. There's the technological for people that want to become a technician, an electrician. They want to get into automotive repair, etc., machine repair. And there's also something called professional, which is for people that want to go right into the workforce when they graduate. Completion of any of these baccalaureates qualifies a student to enter the university. So, for that reason, less than 50% of French undergraduates complete the first year of school. And in Bordeaux, we spoke with a group of students, and they spoke about how landlords handle things when somebody comes and they want to rent a room or an apartment. They say, what are you majoring in? And someone says, oh, I'm a psychology major. This is going to be my first year. They say, I don't want you. Because they know there's a very high possibility that that person is going to drop out during the year, and they're going to end up with an empty room. So they want 2nd or 3rd year students or people that are in the Grandes Écoles, because those people are pretty sure that they're going to be able to make it through. So the new system that's being developed in France, it has to find a way to address this, in my opinion. And you can do it either by restricting admissions to these universities, or you can do so by developing remedial programs that will require additional resources than what they have right now. These are some things which I just thought were worth further research and reflection based on my experience. First of all, there are significant dimensions, in my opinion, as I've already touched on a little bit, of French pedagogy and methodology that may be applicable to U.S. education. Secondly, I think that some opportunity should be given for a group of French educators to come to the United States the way we could go to France, so they can be exposed to the hands-on and the ups and downs of U.S. accreditation and methods of assessing student learning. Because I feel that this is an area where they're doing certain things, but really I believe the U.S. has had a lot of experience in this area through our regional accreditation associations, through our professional accreditation associations, and there's not the need to reinvent the wheel. They may want to make some adaptations, but I think my sense was they need to know more about the way in which these things are done in the United States. Next, I felt that there is the need for us as an institution, and I would say for all institutions, to do reflection on where we're headed and why and when. Things didn't have to blow up into a riot in 1968 in France if they had been reflecting and observing and seeing the needs. And also, this move now towards this consolidation, I think that it would have been good if somehow there was more of an opportunity for reflection and involvement from the institutions, and it didn't come from like a presidential mandate and the promise of funding to be the way to kind of move things forward. But the same thing could happen to us in the United States. We really need to reflect on what we're doing, what we're offering, what we need to do, and it's one of the nice things about having a self-study, which we're in the process of doing now. And we also need to get feedback from our peer institutions. We also have to look at things like rankings and developments that are occurring in other places. And I think also as, I think regional accrediting agencies likewise need to do some reflecting as accreditation agencies, the same for professional agencies, and take into account developments in other countries and their implications. I think that's preferable to the kind of carrot-stick approach which can come when mandates come from above. That's not just happening in France, it's happening in the United States. There's tremendous pressure in the US Congress, for example, even in the White House and other places, for change within American institutions. But sometimes they don't have sufficient feedback about the issues that we deal with in our institutions. And there's the need somehow for us to become more proactive. It's one of the things I felt through this experience. Also, I would just say there is the need to reflect on the long-term impact of the Shanghai rankings and their likely future trajectory. Because my guess is they have been so successful that it's just a matter of time that we in the United States and Europe need to anticipate a future Shanghai ranking, or perhaps a Beijing ranking, pick another part of China, of undergraduate institutions because of the significant China student market. We can anticipate that those things are going to be happening, and we need to kind of move forward to understand, anticipate, and hopefully be able to meet some of the expectations of those particular criteria. Final observations, I'd say we were graciously received everywhere we went. I met people at the Institute of Political Studies in Bordeaux, also at the University of Paris Sorbonne 1, which is where they do their law studies, political science studies and things. And several of them have expressed an interest to come and speak at UB, and I'm pursuing that. And I could also identify several useful venues in France where we can place our students, I believe, who want to study overseas. Last year we had 3 of our students studying in France. Dr. Wei's daughter's in France right now, so there are possibilities there for us, and we need to look at those. And I would also like to encourage more of us at UB, and in CPIA in particular, to look into Fulbright opportunities. I felt lucky I found something that somehow fit for me. I think that you also may want to look at there are so many different types of Fulbright opportunities. You know, I had been thinking about there's something called a Fulbright specialist, and I've been thinking for some time about the idea of going to a country where I spoke the language and doing something there, either in peace studies or peace education, or maybe something in regional political economy, something like that, in one of those areas. But anyway, I just came across this one when I saw this opportunity. I thought, oh, that actually fits for me. So I would encourage you to visit the Fulbright page, and there are opportunities that you may indeed find fit well for you, and not just for faculty, but also administrators as well. There are lots of opportunities. And finally, I said, my observation is the French are committed in their decision to proceed with the current transformation of their higher education. And my final conclusion is the French built Paris, which is still the most beautiful city in the world. Any questions? Yes, Dr. Scott.
You know, I kept waiting for you to say, and then the French decided to do their own ranking system.
Well, in a sense they have. That's what U-multi-rank is about.
Yeah.
It's a European Union initiative where they are looking at certain types of criteria, They do look a little bit more at issues related to retention, for example. Quality of teaching, they talk about, for example. There is concern already expressed right now that those rankings, there's going to be a meeting in Ireland, I believe, in January or February for the U multi-rank process. And they will release for the first time their rankings next year. There are skeptics who say it's going to definitely have a European bias, the new rankings, but we'll see.
Yeah, actually, I have a question in regards to the campuses, because here in the United States, a lot of the universities have the dormitories, they have the dining halls, but when I was as a student in France, I didn't really see that. Like, I don't know if there's any university there that has the whole entire student experience. Any thoughts about that? Like, do you think if France had more universities that had the complete student experience, would that change in any way?
Well, it might, except in France, what they really try to encourage people to do is to study where they live, where they're from. They don't like to encourage so much students to come to other places. Yeah, so I mean, one of the reasons probably, there is something, you know, in Paris called Cité Universitaire, where actually there are people, where people can live. It's not necessarily right to the campus, but it's a place for students. However, they are not so much interested in building a lot of residences around Paris, because that's where everyone will come, you know. So basically, they try to encourage people to study where they live, and they try to make it comfortable and attractive, and that's why, as I said, really, nowadays in France, pretty much the universities are flat in terms of undergraduate education. There's still a rank. I mean, you know, like I guess like the University of, you know, the whole Paris Sorbonne cluster, if you will, in terms of doctoral studies and things, it still is really the top in terms of that. However, in terms of undergraduate, they're all flat. So you can go here, you can go there. It doesn't really make any difference. They're the same. Yes? Nate?
A larger question just in terms of your thoughts about the ranking of institutions. I mean, it seems to me to be such a narrow focus on certain criteria and leaves out so many intangibles that you really can't measure that define the quality of an educational experience. So I'm just curious about, you know, because you were intensely learning about these rankings, and it seems like there's definitely a move toward more of them, not fewer of them. You know, what are your thoughts in general about how, you know, we as an institution can view them, and as prospective students can view them in the context of getting a good education that's the right fit for an individual?
That's a question to ask me in my office.
Oh. Well, if you can give a teaser now, we can have a follow-up.
Well, I mean, I think we need some rankings. We need rankings. I think people are never going to be really happy with the criteria which are set out for rankings. I think that people have to lobby and actually to move up in the rankings. It takes a number of years to be able to go up and things like that. So it's a process. So is it fair always? No, it's not fair. And also I think that when people come to a university, they don't just come to a university because of the overall ranking of the university.
Yeah.
There may be parts of the university which are, you know, particularly strong. And I think that's what we need to highlight. And those things aren't going to necessarily be shown right away. Like the École Normale Supérieure in France, it's a top school. I don't think you can, you know, I don't know what you can compare it to. But the fact it's 71 in the Shanghai rankings, we understand because of the criteria, it's down there, you know. And now they're doing these other things so that they can become part of a type of a cluster, so they will go up in the rankings, and everything else with it will go up in the rankings. But it's kind of unfortunate that things have to be done that way. There also has to be another way to kind of interpret and recognize, you know, the unique value of a particular institution. And that's part of the responsibility of the institutions to do that. They have to kind of get out the word about what's special about them. So the rankings are one thing, and the other thing is our ability to get the word out about our schools and colleges. Okay, thank you all. Great.
I was just going to ask from a student perspective, how do you think the students feel about the changes that are happening now? I know, initially there was some unrest, but now that things are moving in a kind of a gradual, maybe more progressive and respectful way, how do you feel like the students precede that?
Well, that's a good question, Lena. I think we're not, I think that things are just beginning. I think that the undergraduates, the new students, are going to be, their voice is probably going to become loud, because what you hear everywhere is all, you know, the University of Paris, they're getting $2.4 billion, you know, in order to further this particular project. So I think if it's not possible also to address the needs and the expectations of the undergraduate students, then the undergraduate students are probably going to be saying, what about us? You know, what's being done for us? How are you helping us to be able to go forward? So that's why I think hopefully this whole thing will kind of encourage a re-examination of the undergraduate programs as well, you know, in France. Okay, thank you all very much.
Cuties are being, huh?